At his 60th birthday banquet, my husband, William Carter, suddenly announced that he wanted to retire to the countryside with his first love. Everyone expected me to object, but I agreed. After decades of failing to make him love me, I decided to set him free. However, before he left, I demanded that he leave with nothing. After all, most of the money in this household was earned by me. William sneered, "All you care about is money." He added, "I won't need money once I retire to the countryside. I'll still live a comfortable life." I thought he was being incredibly naive. His so-called countryside retreat was nothing more than living in a cozy house, occasionally growing some vegetables, surrounded by friendly neighbors. But in reality, what awaited him was his family's old, crumbling house that had been abandoned for years. Each morning, he would wake up to endless farm work, an empty village, cockroaches and rats crawling everywhere, and the risk of falling ill without access to proper medical care. "I'm leaving for the countryside. This might be my last gathering with all of you. I just want a peaceful life." At his birthday banquet, William declared excitedly, as if making a grand announcement. The guests exchanged glances, all wondering if something was wrong with him. He was 60 years old, an ordinary office worker who had just retired 2 months ago with a monthly pension of $5,000. If he weren't my husband, no one would have even attended this banquet. His retirement life was already no different from a countryside retreat, spending his days in my villa's garden, growing vegetables, chatting with a few friends. Wasn't that already a peaceful life? What more did he want? And why did he have to make such a dramatic announcement about it at his own birthday party? "William, aren't you already living a countryside retreat?" I asked, confused. I pointed to the small vegetable garden in our villa's backyard and the chicken coop beside it. "Isn't this the life you wanted?" Because of his obsession with growing vegetables, I had to relocate several beautiful winter plums from my garden. Because of his desire to raise chickens, I hired workers to build a chicken coop and even arranged for someone to teach him how to take care of them. Wasn't that enough? What else was he dissatisfied with? "It's not enough. I've decided to move back to my parents' old home in the village," William said confidently. "The village? But my business is in the city. I can't leave for too long. If you move there alone, I'd be worried. The roads are remote, and the medical conditions aren't good. If something happens to your health, getting treatment would be difficult." I frowned, completely disagreeing with his decision. How many people worked their entire lives just to escape a small rural village? And now he wanted to go back? "Who said I was going with you?" William's voice was cold. "You love making money so much, then go spend your life with it." "I'm going with Linda." He looked at me and said firmly, "She already agreed to it. For years, I stayed in this marriage for the sake of my parents, for the children. Otherwise, I would have divorced you long ago. I've had enough. I want to live for myself now. I want to pursue my own happiness. Since we've been together for so many years, I hope you won't try to stop me." As he spoke, his chest rose and fell with agitation. It was obvious these words had been buried inside him for a long time. He had been hiding his true thoughts from me all these years, unwilling or unable to say them out loud for various reasons. But now, his parents were gone, our children were grown, and I no longer had much value to him. So now, suddenly, he remembered to live for himself. Where was this courage back when he had nothing? Where was this determination when our children were young, and I was still young? If he had told me back then that he didn't love me, I would have agreed to a divorce. There was no need to waste decades of my life, turning our years together into a ridiculous joke. My eyes stung with unshed tears as I looked at him. "William, are you asking for a divorce?" "Yes, Emily, I want a divorce," he said without hesitation. In his eyes, now that the children were grown and his parents had passed, nothing was holding him back anymore. He couldn't wait to break free from his wealthy businesswoman wife and live his so-called free life. Dad, have you really thought this through? If you leave with Aunt Linda, there is no place for you in this family anymore. My daughter, Sarah Carter, saw that William was serious about going through with it and quickly tried to persuade him. Dad, just admit you were wrong. You and Mom have been together for over 30 years. Now, you want to divorce her for another woman? If it weren't for Mom, you wouldn't be where you are today. My son, James Carter, also hurried over to talk some sense into him. Even our children thought his decision was absurd. But William simply scoffed. I have done nothing wrong. I want a divorce. I want to retire to the countryside. I belong only to myself. With that, he boldly walked past the crowd and reached for Linda's hand, who had been standing quietly in the corner. William. Linda looked up at him with teary eyes and immediately threw herself into his arms, putting on a pitiful act like some delicate flower. It was disgusting to watch. And yet, William ate it up completely. I'm finally free. From now on, we will be together. We will retreat to the countryside and live the life we want, he declared, as if he was ready to take on the whole world just for her. I found it laughable. The man I had loved for decades not only had no place for me in his heart but had apparently been clinging to his first love all this time. For so many years, I had given him the best life possible, provided the best education for our children, and ensured his parents could enjoy their old age without worries. And yet, in his eyes, all of it was just a cage, something that trapped him. If someone doesn't love you, even the good things you do for them become burdens. I once believed that if I gave him enough time, if I treated him well enough, he would eventually see my sincerity. We had been married for over 30 years. Even a stone would have warmed by now. But William's heart was colder than stone. It was impossible to warm it. He had only ever cared about Linda, the same woman who had abandoned him all those years ago for another man. To him, every flaw Linda had was a virtue. And to him, every virtue I had was just another flaw. Maybe this marriage should have ended long ago. I raised my hand, intending to slap him across the face. But just as my hand hovered in the air, I lowered it. He wasn't worth it. He wasn't worth my anger, my energy, or my dignity. I took a deep breath and let Sarah and James support me as I sat down. Once I had calmed myself, I looked at the two people standing together and said coldly, "As you wish. We'll get a divorce." William didn't show the slightest hint of guilt. Instead, he cheerfully dragged a suitcase out from the storage room, one he had clearly packed in advance, and tossed a divorce agreement in front of me. "Sign it, and we'll go to the courthouse to finalize the process. I'm leaving with Linda this afternoon." Sarah couldn't hold back anymore and grabbed his hand. "Dad, if you really go through with this, if you abandon Mom for this woman, then don't blame me for never recognizing you as my father again." James immediately stood by her side. "I feel the same way. If you betray Mom, then we're done with you." Thankfully, I had raised my children well. They didn't side with their father. They stood with me. They had seen with their own eyes how hard my life had been over the years. William hesitated when he looked at our children. He could ignore me, but he wasn't completely indifferent to them. Sensing the hesitation in his heart, Linda immediately clung to his arm, her voice trembling as she began to cry. "William, you can't waver now. You promised me we would live in the countryside together. I've been waiting for you all these years." Linda's tears had always been William's weakness. The moment she started crying, his expression hardened again. He pointed at me and snapped, "If there's nothing wrong with the divorce agreement, just sign it already. I don't have time to waste." The nerve of him! Talking to me like that! I wasn't going to indulge him anymore. Without hesitation, I tore the divorce agreement into shreds right in front of everyone. My voice was sharp and unforgiving. "You? A cheating, useless man who contributed nothing to this family? You think you deserve half of everything I built? If you want a divorce, fine. But every cent in this house was earned by me. You, a freeloader, will leave with nothing." William had never seen me treat him with the cold, businesslike ruthlessness of a true entrepreneur. His entire body shook with rage. William always hated it when people said he was living off a woman. But now, those very words had come from my mouth, confirming what had always been the truth. He pointed a trembling finger at me, struggling to find his words. "I have my own salary." Before I could respond, Sarah let out a mocking laugh. "Dad, your $5,000 salary isn't even enough to support yourself. Mom paid for everything, Grandpa and Grandma's medical bills, my and James's tuition at international schools. You really haven't contributed much to this family." William turned to James, hoping for support, but my son stood firmly by my side. "Dad, I think Mom is right. If you insist on divorcing her, you should leave with nothing." Seeing that everyone was siding with me, William was so angry he nearly lost his balance. If not for Linda holding on to him, he might have collapsed on the spot. He finally let out a deep sigh. "Fine. I'll leave with nothing. It doesn't matter, I have my $5,000 salary. I can live just fine in the countryside with that." He had barely finished speaking when Linda's expression darkened. She was only with him for his money, if not for that, what else was she after? His old age? His declining health? His body that had long been worn down by stress and illness? But then I thought about it, his best years, whether willingly or not, had already been spent with me. Now, all that was left was a worn-out shell of a man. I looked at him and felt indifferent. If someone wanted to pick up my trash, then so be it. At least I wouldn't have to deal with his funeral arrangements in the future. Without wasting any more time, I called my lawyer and had a new divorce agreement printed out in my study. Right then and there, we both signed it. From this moment on, William Carter would walk away with nothing. He signed without hesitation but couldn't leave without throwing one last insult at our children. "You two are ungrateful traitors. From now on, I have no children." With that, he grabbed his suitcase and the car keys from the table, ready to leave. "Hold on," I called out. William smirked, thinking I was regretting my decision. "What? You're changing your mind? It's too late. I'm leaving you no matter what." I pointed at the suitcase and car keys in his hands. "That suitcase? I bought it. That car? I bought it too. Don't take what doesn't belong to you." His breath came in sharp gasps. He had clearly not expected me to be this ruthless. Linda pointed an accusing finger at me. "This is too much. How are we supposed to get to the countryside without a car? Are we supposed to take a taxi?" I laughed. "That sounds like your problem, not mine." Seeing that I wouldn't back down, William, unwilling to lose face, stormed back upstairs with his suitcase. When he came back down, he was holding nothing but a plastic bag. Through the thin material, I could see a single old phone and a paycheck card. Not even his underwear or socks, because those were all bought by me. With forced dignity, he declared, "From today on, we have nothing to do with each other. Let's go finalize the divorce." He then grabbed Linda's hand and left in disgrace. Since he no longer had a car, he had to walk a mile to the nearest bus stop before taking multiple transfers to get to the courthouse. Meanwhile, I changed out of my gown, reassured my guests, and drove to the courthouse in comfort with my children. Even after taking my time, I still arrived before them. Growing impatient, I had my butler call to check on them. The answer made me laugh. William hadn't taken public transportation in years and had gotten lost. It would take him another 30 minutes to find his way. A lifetime of being taken care of had made him completely useless in the real world. I couldn't help but wonder, was this man really capable of surviving a countryside life with Linda? Nearly an hour later, they finally arrived, looking completely disheveled. The paperwork was processed quickly, though there was a mandatory waiting period. The clerk informed us we would have to return in a month to finalize the divorce. Before leaving, William glared at me. "Just wait. We're going to have the perfect countryside life. You'll be the one envying us." I nearly burst out laughing. Did he really think I, after living in wealth and comfort, would envy a man with no job, no money, and no future, struggling to survive in the middle of nowhere? He was living in a fantasy. The idyllic countryside life he imagined wasn't just sunshine and poetry, it was hard labor, endless inconveniences, and the reality of being completely unprepared for the challenges ahead. I couldn't wait to see him fail. When I got home, the first thing I did, I turned to my children and said, "From today onward, none of you are allowed to help him financially. If I find out that you do, I will revoke your inheritance rights." We might be family, but I had to set the rules straight from the start. I wasn't going to let this situation turn into some guilt-ridden drama later. Sarah and James looked surprised, clearly not expecting me to be this serious. Even though they had sided with me today, he was still their father. I couldn't guarantee they wouldn't secretly help him out in the future. Sarah, understanding me best, immediately spoke up, "Mom, I swear I won't give him a single penny. He needs to suffer for a while to understand how good he had it before." James also reassured me, "Mom, don't worry. I won't do anything stupid. Dad brought this upon himself." Just as we were speaking, the butler approached me. "Ma'am, do you still want to keep the vegetable garden and chicken coop in the backyard?" I waved my hand dismissively. "Those noisy chickens that made it impossible to sleep? Get rid of them. Tear down the garden, too. And move back the winter plums that were relocated." After a moment's thought, I added, "Also, check who brought Linda here today. Everyone knows she was William's first love, yet someone still had the audacity to invite her to my house to humiliate me. Our family events are strictly invitation only. No invitation, no entry." The butler was efficient. In less than half an hour, the vegetable garden was gone, the chicken coop was dismantled, and he had brought back security footage. The video showed that Linda had been invited by William's so-called friend, Mr. Lin. I immediately made a decision. I remember our contract with Mr. Lin's company is about to expire. No need to renew it. I was sending a clear message: anyone who helped William was choosing to be my enemy. From today onward, no one in our circle would lend William a hand. If he were just an ordinary retiree, his $5,000 monthly pension might be enough to live comfortably in the countryside. But this was William, someone who had spent his entire life living extravagantly. That money wouldn't even last him a month. Sure enough, by that afternoon, I received a call from Mrs. Lee, an acquaintance from our social circle. "Emily, you won't believe this. William and Linda came to my supermarket to shop for supplies before heading to the countryside. They loaded up their cart, but when it came time to pay, he realized he didn't have enough money. He actually had the nerve to ask me for a discount." I chuckled. "And what did you say?" "Of course, I told him no. After all the things he's done to you, why would I help him?" "What happened next?" "Well, I heard that when he couldn't pay, he tried to get Linda to cover it. But she told him there was no need to buy such expensive blankets and silk pajamas for a countryside life. In the end, they left empty-handed and went searching for a cheap roadside shop." Hearing that, I felt an immense sense of satisfaction. "Thanks for letting me know. I owe you a lunch and a game of poker sometime." William had been spoiled by the life I provided for him. He was used to sleeping on Egyptian cotton sheets, wearing pure silk pajamas, and eating nothing but organic food. Now, reality was about to teach him a hard lesson. Curious about how his new life in the countryside was going, I reached out to the only person still living in his old village, a local bachelor known for having nothing better to do. I bought him a smartphone with a 5G plan and paid him a generous fee to report back on William and Linda's situation every few days. Of course, I told him not to interfere, just to observe. I didn't want to sabotage them. I just wanted to know that they were suffering. That alone was worth the money. The very first day, the man sent me a video he had secretly recorded. The footage showed William and Linda, exhausted and covered in dust, carrying heavy bags as they finally reached his old village home after multiple bus transfers and a long walk. The moment William laid eyes on the house, he froze. Half of it had collapsed. The front door hung open, revealing an interior stripped of furniture, with wooden planks and bricks scattered across the floor. Cobwebs covered every corner, and the glass windows were completely shattered. How was anyone supposed to live in this? He clearly remembered that when he had left home at 17, the house had been in perfect condition. The furniture was intact, and flowers had bloomed in the front yard. But now, the yard was overgrown with weeds, and the inside was in complete ruins. William was dumbfounded. Linda's face visibly darkened as well. Realizing she would have to live here long term, she couldn't help but reach out and push William in frustration. "Didn't you say your old home was warm and cozy? This is it." William hadn't expected things to look this bad. He turned to the first person he saw in the village, the local bachelor I had hired. "Excuse me, where's all the furniture in my house? Was my place robbed?" The bachelor, cigarette hanging from his lips, chuckled and said, "Your parents gave everything away to the villagers when they left over a decade ago. They said they'd never return to this place." "The windows? Probably some bored kid smashed them. And the roof? Well, that's what happens when you don't maintain a house. A lot of the old homes around here have collapsed." William's first thought was to track down his lost furniture. "Do you know which houses they were moved to?" The man smirked. "I'm the only one still living in this village. Everyone else moved away long ago. There's no one left to ask." "That house of yours? It's completely unlivable. If you want, I can rent you my nephew's place." William hesitated. Renovating his old home would cost a fortune, and he didn't have that kind of money. He had no choice but to check out the rental. When he and Linda arrived, they found a plain cement house. Inside, the furniture was not only ancient but also covered in mold. The entire place reeked of dampness and decay. Their first instinct was to leave. But this village was too remote, there were no other rental options. The abandoned houses were in even worse condition, completely unfit for living. In the end, he had no choice but to accept. William asked the man for a price. The bachelor grinned. $1,200 a month. William's jaw nearly hit the floor. "Are you robbing me? You're charging $1,200 for this dump." The bachelor shrugged. "Take it or leave it. You could always go back to the city, there are places there for $500. But William had made a grand declaration about retreating to the countryside. If he turned back now, he'd lose face. He glanced at Linda, who was already looking restless, and clenched his teeth. Fine. But paying rent didn't mean they could move in immediately. The house was filthy, and it would take at least 2 days to clean, scrub, and air it out. Until then, they had to stay at the bachelor's place. According to my butler's report, the bachelor was a notorious slob. His home was packed with garbage, and the stench was unbearable. By the time those 2 days were over, both William and Linda had developed dark circles under their eyes from lack of sleep. And because of his high blood pressure, William nearly fainted while cleaning the rental house. Yet even after all that, he stubbornly clung to his fantasy of a countryside retreat. Linda had already argued with him multiple times, insisting that life here was too inconvenient and that they should return to the city. But every time, William sweet-talked her into staying. But soon, a new problem arose. They had to eat. The seeds they bought weren't going to sprout overnight, and the chicks they purchased wouldn't lay eggs anytime soon. Meanwhile, the groceries they had brought were running out fast. Desperate, they borrowed the bachelor's tricycle and made a difficult trip to town, barely managing to buy 10 pounds of rice. That's when William realized he was out of money. His $5,000 monthly pension had already been spent. Between rent, daily necessities, a few changes of clothes, and Linda's cosmetics, his bank account had dried up within days. Linda finally had enough. "William, why are we doing this to ourselves? Let's stop being so stubborn and go back to the city. I'll return to my retirement home, and you can go back to your wife." Linda had been living in a senior facility, fully funded by her son. But after she chose to leave with William, her son cut her off. He refused to let his money support a man like William. William was furious. "You're the one who wanted this countryside life. I gave up everything for you. And now you want to go back? You're betraying our love." Linda knew she was in the wrong, but she simply couldn't endure a life without money. After thinking for a while, she came up with a compromise. "My son works in video production. How about we let him film our countryside retreat? If we make money from it, we can afford to live here." At first, William refused. He thought broadcasting their daily struggles was humiliating. Is this still considered a retreat to the countryside? William didn't like the idea of filming their daily lives, but he was more afraid of Linda leaving him. So, in the end, he reluctantly agreed. Linda's son was quite capable. He quickly set up an online presence for them, promoting their simple countryside love story. Using carefully edited footage, he portrayed them as an old couple deeply in love, living a peaceful, picturesque life. The videos showed them waking up at sunrise, working the land, and sharing meals under the setting sun. Their good looks and affectionate interactions soon attracted a loyal fanbase. Viewers started calling them the ideal example of true love. When I heard about this, I couldn't help but laugh. This was his so-called countryside retreat? What a joke! Everything was staged and scripted. Instead of truly embracing rural life, they were busy maintaining a fake online image. But to my surprise, their videos actually made them some real money. When Sarah found out, she immediately asked me, "Mom, do you want me to expose them? I can reveal the truth and ruin their reputation overnight." I shook my head. "Not yet. Let them have their moment. The higher they climb, the harder they'll fall." Because I let them be, none of my contacts or family members interfered. Without anyone calling them out, they assumed they were in the clear. At first, William was awkward in front of the camera, leaving Linda to do most of the talking. She would reminisce about how they met when they were young, how they fell in love, while William simply kept his head down, doing farm work in the background. Occasionally, he would pick some fruit and hand-feed Linda, adding a touch of romance. But once they started accepting brand deals and sponsorships, seeing the steady stream of money flowing into their account, William got carried away. To attract more viewers, he started publicly declaring his love for Linda. "I owe her too much from my youth. Returning to the countryside is my way of making it up to her and giving her the life she deserves." Linda would respond sweetly, calling him her dear husband, saying, "Having you is my greatest blessing." Seeing that the moment was right, I had my people start leaving comments in their live stream. "The two of you seem so happy. Do you have children?" William immediately thought of Sarah and James, who had cut ties with him. His eyes flickered with hesitation, and he was about to say no when Linda pointed at the man filming them. "That's our son," she said with a bright smile. My people knew how to stir the pot. "He doesn't look like a grandfather. Are you sure he's really your son?" William had no choice but to nod. He couldn't exactly say, "No, my real children disowned me because I cheated on their mother." That would ruin the perfect image they had built. But one lie always leads to another. From then on, he had to act even more affectionate toward Linda's son on camera, constantly referring to him as my boy and playing the role of a devoted father figure. Until the moment everything collapsed. Sarah, decisive as always, made her move. She publicly exposed William, providing hotel records proving he had been cheating on me with Linda while we were still married. She also released the video where William himself declared that he had cut ties with his real children for Linda. That was the final nail in the coffin. William was now known all over the internet as an unfaithful, selfish old man. Linda, once praised as a devoted lover, was now nothing more than the homewrecker who ruined a family. Their dream of profiting from their countryside retreat was completely shattered. The internet exploded with outrage. So this isn't some beautiful love story, it's just a disgusting affair. He keeps saying he owes this old woman, but what about his wife? Did she mean nothing to him? He abandoned his own kids but calls his mistress's son his own? This guy is unbelievable. Report him. As the backlash grew, many viewers who had purchased products through their sponsorships demanded refunds. Brands started pulling out, and suppliers came knocking, demanding compensation for lost sales. To make matters worse, their social media accounts were eventually banned from the platform. Linda's son, sensing the situation was beyond saving, stopped filming for them altogether. Whatever little money they had just earned was now completely wiped out by refunds and penalties. With no other source of income, William was back to surviving on his $5,000 monthly pension. At the start of each month, he would rush to withdraw his money. But it was never enough. He had rent to pay, medication to buy, and Linda had her own demands. She needed winter clothes, beauty treatments, and other expenses. The money disappeared quickly, and soon, the two of them were fighting over who was spending more. One cold morning, Linda finally had enough. She packed her bags and, without a word, took a bus back to the city to live with her son. She had abandoned William, just like she had decades ago. Now, in that small, run-down countryside house, William was completely alone. Sarah came to me, a mischievous smile on her lips. "Mom, since Dad wanted to retire to the countryside so badly, let's make sure he gets exactly what he wanted. No distractions, no complications, just pure countryside living." I was quite pleased with her idea. As a reward, I gifted her a set of my treasured jewelry. When James returned home and saw that I had given Sarah the jewelry, he looked a bit upset. "Mom, my girlfriend really liked that set. Why didn't you wait before giving it away?" I smiled knowingly. James might have outwardly supported me, but deep down, he was just like his father, always scheming for his own benefit. I pulled out a stack of documents and tossed them in front of him. "I think I've warned you before. I told you to stay away from your father, but you didn't listen. And now you dare ask me for jewelry? Think carefully about how you're going to explain yourself to me." Faced with undeniable evidence, James finally admitted, "I only helped him a little. I saw that his influencer career was picking up, and I didn't want to see him struggle too much in his old age. I just hired some fake followers to boost his numbers." "Mom, I'm still on your side." I shook my head, unmoved. "From the moment you chose to betray me for him, we were destined to go our separate ways." I had warned him not to help William, but he refused to listen. Everything that happened to William was entirely his own doing. I immediately revoked James's position in the company and withdrew the properties that were about to be transferred to his name. He had lived too comfortably for too long. If he wanted to betray me, then he could go out into the world and fend for himself. I thought James would run to the countryside to live with his father, but he was smarter than that. He learned his lesson quickly and cut ties with William in an instant. He repeatedly assured me that he would never have anything to do with his father again. Every day, he called me to apologize, but I didn't waver. He had always relied on me as his safety net. Now that I had cut him off, he had no choice but to experience the real world like any ordinary young man, submitting resumes, going to interviews, struggling for a stable job. His girlfriend, seeing that he had lost my financial support, immediately left him for a wealthy heir. 2 months later, I heard news about William again. Apparently, he had been losing sleep for days because of the rats scurrying around his rental house at night. The stress, poor living conditions, and lack of medical care led to a sudden stroke. Because the village was too remote, he couldn't get help in time. By the time he was taken to the hospital, he was already partially paralyzed. None of his relatives wanted to help him, they were all afraid of offending me. Desperate, he turned to James for help. James immediately blocked his number. William then reached out to Linda, hoping she would take care of him out of old feelings. Her response was heartless and direct, "I don't have time for this. I'm busy meeting new suitors. You're on your own." After all, Linda had only ever been after his money. She had no interest in spending her days nursing a disabled man. With no one to care for him, William tried to hire a caretaker. The cheapest option was $3,500 a month. If he paid for that, he wouldn't have enough left for rent or medicine. It was at this moment that James finally realized how wrong he had been. He called me several times, but I had already blocked him. He tried to contact me through mutual acquaintances, but no one dared to get involved. A few days later, William passed away in a hospital corridor, alone and forgotten. The local community office handled his cremation. On the day of his cremation, I didn't go. Neither did my children. It was as if he had never existed. No one mourned him. No one remembered him. Meanwhile, I continued to enjoy my fulfilling retirement. As for the company, I officially handed it over to my daughter. She was no longer Sarah Carter. She had changed her name to Sarah Jong, taking my surname instead. As for James, he now lived like any ordinary man, working, dating, struggling, growing. I had no intention of interfering in his life, nor would I ever offer him a helping hand again. And Linda? William's death didn't affect her in the slightest. She continued scheming in her retirement home, flirting with elderly men, hoping to marry rich. But after sleeping around the entire senior community, she failed to find a wealthy benefactor. Instead, she ended up contracting several nasty diseases. Not long after, she passed away as well. A fitting end for the both of them.